All right, we're rolling.
Hello, everyone. This is the NBOA Varsity Clinic number 3. Uh, I'm Chuck Eakes. I'm the one you can't see still. Quinn Morse is the one you can see, and you can also see Greg Deverson, who's been kind enough to join us as a presenter tonight. Greg is a high-level basketball official at the high school level and above. And Greg, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight and do this presentation. To get started, let me just go over the answers to some of the clinic questions that we asked, some of the questions we asked during the first clinic. The first one that I'll review with you is the question: when the officials realize that they've started the game with teams going the wrong way, by rule, they must disallow any goals scored and start the game over with a jump ball and 8 minutes on the clock. Is that true or false? And the correct answer, I got the correct answer from the person I asked it of. The correct answer is that's false. If we're unfortunate enough to get a game started going in the wrong direction, everything that happens while we're going in the wrong direction counts as if we were, it counts as if we were going in the right direction. And once we find out that we've been going the wrong direction, then we just get them going in the correct direction. I asked the question, what are officials to do by rule if a violation occurs during a jump ball? And I got the right answer to this, but we refereed, the reason I asked the question is because we refereed this wrong a lot. And I've been asked, why do you spend so much time talking about jump ball violations? Have you ever called a jump ball violation? Well, the answer to that question is, in 30 years that I've been doing this, I don't know that I've ever called a jump ball violation on a non-jump, but I have had jump ball violations on jumpers. And I've seen games where there have been jump ball violations on jumpers. I've seen a lot of times when a violation is called, and my main point of continuing to give this presentation on jump ball violations is, my main point is a lot of times we're calling a violation when no violation occurred. I'm more cranked up over that. I hate starting a game with somebody calling a jump ball violation when no violation occurred. I had a guy in a college game where the official who threw the ball up, the ball was legally tapped. The ball hit the floor. The jumper picked the ball up and off we're going until the official who threw the ball up was able to fumble around and get the whistle back in his or her mouth and blow the whistle and call a violation for a jump ball violation. And I waited till the end of the game to ask him why that happened, why that call was made. He said, well, the jumper can't be the first to touch the ball and pick the ball up. And I'm like, well, the jump ball restrictions do end when the ball hits the floor, but be that as it may. So, and then I see a lot of plays where, or a lot of times where we have a violation. Let's say we have a player steal the tap, gets the ball before it gets to its highest point. One of the jumpers gets to the ball before it gets to its highest point. And what happens a lot of times is we just do a redo. It's not a redo; it's a violation. So the answer to the question, what are officials to do by rule if a violation occurs during a jump ball? Administer it as a violation. Give the ball to the team for a throw in. Give it to the team who did not violate, and make sure that you communicated with the table, because they're not going to know that what they're supposed to do with the possession now, the alternating possession now, once the throw in is made. Anything to add to that, Quinn? Have I messed anything up there? That's unusual.
I don't think so.
I asked this question as a true or false question because I know that the crew got it wrong in a game, in at least one game last year. Fortunately, it was not a game that I assigned, but A1 has the ball and is preparing to shoot a free throw when the Team A head coach requests a timeout. A1 has the ball and is preparing to shoot the free throw, and A1's coach asks for a timeout. Can that timeout be granted? Absolutely, it can be granted. 100%. I know that there was at least one game last year where the crew ruled, no, you can't have that timeout. I guess they didn't think that, the head coach could freeze his own shooter. Uh, Conversely, in that same scenario, if the other team requests a timeout, the timeout cannot be granted. So, everybody who answered the questions from Clinic One has gotten an A+. Throw in, let's, Quinn, if you would quickly review, some of the more obvious rules about, or significant rules concerning throw-ins.
Sure. So we're not going to get into every possible scenario here and every way you could end up with a throw in, but let's just start by assuming we have, for whatever reason, a throw in, whether we're coming from a foul, whether we're coming from a violation, whatever it may be. So we have a throw in and we have a spot. Um, So the first is that the player has 5 seconds to release the ball on a pass directly into the court. So important piece there is it's the 5 second count is to release the pass. It's not 5 seconds for the throw in to end, which would be different, right? It's just they simply have 5 seconds to release the ball on a pass directly into the court. Um, the thrower cannot touch inbounds before they release the ball. Now, keep in mind here, they can't touch inbounds if they are stepping on the line. They're still out of bounds. The line is out of bounds. However, if they step across the line and some portion of their body touches in the court, then we would have a violation. Uh, so that's sort of in terms of what the thrower can do. A defender cannot reach across the plane. Okay, so if I'm defending the throw in, I can't reach across the plane. The first offense for that would be a delay of game warning, which we report to the table and to the coach. If we have another offense by that same team, then that would lead to a team technical foul. Uh, the defender, so that's just if they just break the plane, right? They just reach across the throw in plane. If they cross the plane and touch or dislodge the ball, then we have a technical foul. It's not a warning for delay. If they reach across the plane and touch the ball, then we have a technical foul. However, if the thrower is holding the ball across the plane, so there'd be nothing illegal about the thrower who's holding the ball, reaching the ball across the throw-in plane. However, in that case, if the defender touches the ball, then that's legal. So it's not illegal to touch the ball. It's illegal to reach across and touch the ball on the opposite side of the throw-in plane, right? So just be careful and aware of all that. Um, if the defender, however, cannot contact the thrower on any side of the throw-in plane. Okay. So contacting the thrower during a throw in, regardless of whether the contact is on the out of bounds or the inbound side of the throw in plane, is not legal. That is a foul. It's an intentional foul. So two shots and the ball to the offended team, the thrower's team. Um, the other weird scenario that can come up with throw ins, if we have the offensive team commit a foul during the throw in. Okay. So a teammate of the throwers commits a foul during the throw in. We will not shoot any free throws.
If it's a common foul, right?
If it was a common foul, yes, it's correct. So if it was intentional, technical, flagrant, something like that, we always shoot those technical fouls. But if we just have a common foul by a teammate of the thrower, we will not shoot any free throws in that case. The one other thing I'll add quickly, there is a new rule this year related to delaying returning to the court by the thrower. Previously, if a thrower didn't sort of return directly to the court after completing the throw in, that was a technical foul. That has been changed this year to a violation. That aligns the rule with what we do for a player who would delay returning to the court for any other reason if it wasn't a throw in. So that will now be a violation instead of a technical foul. So that's sort of the other piece of that. Once the throw in ends, the thrower needs to return directly to the court. And so there's two aspects now to that. If they delay returning to the court and they are the first to touch the ball upon returning, then we would have just a violation now. And it's no longer a technical foul.
Excellent. Quinn, I was gonna talk about the designated throw-in spots, but I've decided to, hand that off to you.
Okay, perfect. Um, so we've also had some changes. Well, let's first, well, yeah, we've had some changes to the rule about designated spots. So for any violation or foul other than an out of bounds violation, last year we started taking the ball. I think it was last year we switched to the designated spots.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So last year we said it was in the front court, we would go to one of the four designated spots. So for any foul or any violation other than out of bounds, we would go to one of the four designated spots, either at the 28-foot mark on either side or the 3-foot mark on the baseline on either side of the basket. Um, so this year, to help sort of clarify some things and make it a little easier to adjudicate, a couple things have changed. The first is we're now going to use the 3-point line to help us determine where we go. So if it's on or inside the 3-point line, we're going to go to the baseline. If it's outside of the 3-point line, we are going to go to the 28-foot mark. So that's the first change. The second change is that it used last year, those four designated spots were only in play in the front court. Now those four designated spots also apply in the back court. So if we have a rebound and we're going the other way, and then we have, say, a foul by the new defense, if it occurs inside the 3-point arc, we're going to the baseline to one of the 3-foot spots and 3-foot marks. And if it occurs outside the 3-point line, we're going to go to the 28-foot mark in the back court, right? So no more. We're going to the no more in the backcourt, just going to the spot closest to the foul. You're either going to go to the 28-foot mark or to the 3-foot mark, either baseline or sideline. Um, Keep in mind again that does not apply for out of bounds violations. For out of bounds violations, we still put the ball in play closest to the spot of the violation, right? So where the ball went out of bounds. But for inadvertent whistles, timeouts, fouls, any other sort of violations that might happen, we will go to one of those four spots.
Excellent. And you know what, Quinn, also, I know that this has to do with throw-ins, so we might as well just go ahead and briefly mention it. We've now gone pretty much to the women's college rule on being able to bounce the ball across the lane on a throw-in when we're going the other way. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, and actually let me just actually share. I actually just found the diagram here. So this diagram helps illustrate just what we were saying. Again, front court or back court, those four designated spots for throw-ins. Again, something in the 3-point line would go to the baseline. Outside the 3-point line goes to the 28-foot marks. And the play that Chuck is now mentioning is if we have, let's say we have the lead is standing right here, and let's say we've just had an offensive foul called right here. Okay. So if the offensive foul, can you all see my pointer, by the way? I think okay.
I can.
So, okay. So
Yes.
if the offensive foul was called right here, we're going the other way, then we would normally put the ball in play right here. Okay. In a situation in which there is no backcourt pressure, we are now allowed as the lead to stay on this side and bounce the ball across. Okay. If there is no pressure. Okay. So we're gonna have to use some common sense. We're gonna have to look up before we get ready to put the ball in play, see what's going on. But if everybody else has gone to the other end of the court and we're the lead, we can just bounce the ball. If, however, you get the sense that there's going to be any sort of backcourt pressure at all, okay, I would highly suggest you go ahead and force a switch here in order to be able to effectively referee that play. Okay, so we can save steps when there's going to be no pressure, but I would err on the side of forcing a switch if there's any chance. Again, it's a common theme, right? I think you're going to hear throughout all these is get where you need to go to referee the play, right? If you need to be on the other side to effectively referee what's going to happen, then get on the other side. But in a situation where there's no pressure, you can just bounce the ball across and go.
So it's an interesting scenario. If you keep the diagram up for just a second. So the lead over here on, yeah, the other side. Yeah, yeah, there calls the foul. And Quinn, you had him calling a player control, an offensive foul. Yeah, that lead right there calls a player control foul on the other side of that occurs on the other side of the lane, right? So the lead can, bounce the ball across, assuming there's no pressure, blah, blah, blah. But it's an interesting scenario because by mechanic, the lead is opposite the table in this place, so it's supposed to switch with the slot, right? Am I not correct, Quinn?
Yes.
Okay, and 60% of us to 70% of us refuse to do that for some unknown reason, but that's the proper mechanic. So the natural position for the lead to for the slot to come to right there would be right down the line to where the ball can be put in play. But now we're saying no, he's not supposed to do that. Well, he is supposed to do that. No, there's no reason to bounce the ball across at that point because the slot's supposed to come down to become the new lead on the same side of the court where the foul occurred. So you're not going to bounce the ball across in that situation. And I do want us to switch in that situation.
Right. So in the situation where the lead caused the foul here, then slot should come down and become slot should come down here and just become the new lead. Lead's going to go out and report the foul here and then become the new.
Mm-mm.
Oh, sorry. Uh,
Yeah, he's going to
sorry.
stay table side.
Sorry.
Right.
He's going to stay table side
Yeah,
and
he'll
then
be a
become
lead.
the
Right.
new lead. And then the old trail who was here is going to stay and become the new slot.
Right. Now,
But
you just illustrated why nobody wants to do why 70% of our officials don't want to do this because it's the name for that switch is the long switch.
yeah,
And look how long it is. You got to go all that way. And although 110% of the officials who come out to officiate say that one of their top three reasons for officiating because they want to, cardio exercise, they don't like anything that has the name long in it that would involve them having to move. So I really get distressed that we're not willing to do the mechanics correctly, but that's the proper mechanic. Okay, we spent enough time on that. I do want to mention one thing as a reminder. It's kind of a weird deal. So if we're at the baseline with and it's not a spot throw in, the player that's throwing the ball in has the right to run the baseline. If a foul or a violation by the opposing team occurs during that throw-in, and because of the spot of the foul or violation, the ball would come back to that same baseline for another throw-in, the team that has the right to throw the ball in continues to have the right to run the baseline. So the defensive team cannot take away that right to run the baseline by fouling or violating, unless the spot of the foul or the violation is at a at a location of the floor where you would put the ball in play either at the sideline or at the opposite end line. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody, but that's been the rule for years, and I'm just throwing that as a reminder. If I didn't say that clearly, feel free to send me an email and I'll try to get somebody else, Quinn or Greg or somebody next week to clear it up. Quinn, you've got a couple of questions for our folks.
yes. So first question for Landon Rabin. How wide and how deep is the designated throw-in spot? So if I have a designated spot throw-in, how wide and how deep is that spot? Second question for Matthew Thomas. When does the throw-in begin? And the third question for Ben Say, if an official administers a throw in to the wrong team, so it's supposed to be White's ball, but Black comes and stands at the designated spot, uh, when can the mistake be rectified? So if he's still standing there, if I hand him the ball, if the throw in starts, when the throw in ends, like up until what point can I rectify that mistake that it should have been White's throw in and not Black's? So Landon Rabin, Matthew Thomas, Ben Say, questions for you all.
Good luck with those guys. We have one clip for a throw in. We just decided to throw this in because it amused me. So Quinn, if you'll just run us through this clip real quick. A violation was called on this play. You're gonna have to look quick to see it.
Yep.
They make good decisions with it. Bouncy line return, Blake running.
All right, I'll replay that for you one time. It cuts pretty quick, so you can see that the thrower doesn't have the ball yet, but the ball's going to be handed, and then a violation is called. We cannot tell from here what the official signals, if anything, but some violation is called. Um, just to make sure we're sort of all on the same page. So Landon is going to let us know how wide and how deep that designated spot is. Um, but I can tell you this: whatever Landon comes back to us with, she doesn't exceed that. Okay. So here there's no violation. If we're just looking at what happens, there's no violation. The ball is released here. We're still within the designated spot. Okay. Um, there's certainly no time issue. Um, there's no the thrower is running, and you might say, well, it's a designated spot thrower and they can't run. There's nothing in the rule book that says they can't run. They can't leave the designated spot, right? But that's different. They're allowed within the designated spot. They can do whatever they want. If as long as she's within the designated spot, she can move however she wants. Okay. I think what's likely here, and the thing we want to emphasize is that the official was caught off guard by what happened because the official hands actually the official bounces the ball to the player here, and then very quickly the thrower takes the ball, takes a step to the right, and releases it and runs in bounds. So I think the key here is when we administer a throw in, when the ball leaves our hands, we've got to be ready to referee, and we've got to be ready. We've got to expect the unexpected. So don't be caught off guard, just like with all these other things we talk about. Don't be caught off guard and put air in your whistle because something weird happens. I think that's really what we want to emphasize on this play. There is no violation, certainly that any of us have been able to identify here.
Very good. Let's talk about block charge plays for a little bit, guys. Uh, Quinn, if you would just remind us what the rule is about how to obtain or what needs to be done to obtain an initial legal guarding position. I give you a lot of responsibility when you have to find clips and discuss rules
And unmute my microphone. Uh,
but that's why we call you the boy genius.
I've been the boy genius for like 15 years. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
we probably need to drop that boy part.
Yeah. Um, two things to think about when we're talking about block charge play. So we've got to establish legal guarding position. You have to establish first. And once you establish, then maintain. It's harder to establish than it is to maintain. Okay. So you have to establish, and then once you establish, you can sort of things relax a little bit. Um, so in this case, in order to obtain an initial legal guarding position, to establish an initial legal guarding position, the guard must have both feet on the floor, uh, and both feet touching the floor, and the front of their torso has to be facing the opponent. So I've got to have both feet on the floor facing my opponent. Okay. Now, once I do that, I have other options. I can jump. I can take one foot off. I don't have to keep both feet on the floor. Both feet on the floor. I can retreat. There are a lot of other things I can do. But the first thing I have to do is I have to get both feet on the floor facing my opponent. Okay. So if we watch this,
And when Quinn says both feet on the floor, he means both feet touching the playing court. So if one foot's,
yes,
they gotta be in bounds with both feet. Okay, just a minor point of
yes. Sorry,
clarification.
touching the playing court. So actually, this is a good when you have plays that come baseline. If you have a defender that has a foot out of bounds, they do not have a legal guarding position. And whatever contact, if that player runs right through their chest, if one of their feet is out of bounds, it's a block. So that part is crucially important.
That would also apply to screeners. And so you may see high level basketball teams draw up an inbound play where they have a screener right on the baseline to drop something for the inbounder to come on the other side. Or if that screener has their foot out of bounds, they are not legally there.
Great point.
Good
Great
point.
point. All right, so Greg's going to walk us through this first play. So with all that in mind, right now we want to think about, okay, let's start looking at some block charge plays. Let's break them down in terms of, right, do they have an initial legal guarding position? Do they maintain that legal guarding position? And therefore, how do we rule on this play? Do we have a blocking foul or do we have a player control foul? So, Greg, I'll just play this through once, and then I think we have a replay of this one.
Yep, I think we have this live
Base,
feed and then the baseline angle.
yeah.
It's going to happen on the low block, close to the bottom of the screen. Entry pass, crash, play control fouls ruled. I think a better look would be the baseline angle, and then we can get to actually talking about how the rule applies here. So you have an entry pass. You have a defender who has 2 feet on the ground. They are inbounds. The torso is facing the defender, and the defender actually gets there prior to the offensive player moving towards the basket. So those are all cues to let us know that, hey, this is a legal defender. So once we've established that that's a legal defender, now we have to judge whether or not the contact's illegal. And I know there might be people on the call or others who say, hey, well, Greg, he doesn't go through him. He goes to him, but not necessarily through him. You have to be able to understand the force that's delivered behind this play. And so even though he may not go all the way through him, the offensive player leads with his left shoulder on a legal defender, and there's enough force to send that defender to the ground. This is a player control foul.
Excellent. Next clip. Quinn, you talked about an initial legal guarding position, how to establish it. What about when we're airborne?
Yeah, so once we're airborne, if we have the offensive player goes airborne, then the guard must have obtained a legal guarding position before the opponent left the floor. Okay, so when we have and most often, right, we see this on offensive players going to the basket, right? So you have an airborne shooter. In order to draw a blocking foul, sorry, in order to draw a player control foul, the defensive player has to have that legal guarding position before the player goes airborne. Okay. Until they have both feet off the floor, they're not airborne. This is the rule in high school basketball. At other levels of basketball, the rule is different. Um, but for high school basketball, until they are airborne, the defender has until they are airborne in order to establish that legal guarding position. If they do not establish it before the player goes airborne, then even if they have established by the time of contact, it's too late. It would be a blocking foul. Okay. Did I say that right?
Said it right to me.
Okay.
That's why I hired you. That's why I hired you two guys.
I'll be asking for a raise soon. All right. Here.
Wait, you're
Let's look
getting
at this.
paid? No, playing.
So he just gave you the rule, Greg, to help you out, because we know you probably didn't know the rule, but can you tell us about this play?
Yeah, there's actually a lot going on in this play. And here you have to now judge whether or not the defender who took the contact gets there prior to the offensive player becoming an airborne shooter. And from this angle, it's really hard to tell whether or not he's one in the path of the offensive player or two when he gets there. And the reason why I want to harp on that point is because take a look at who's the official calling the play. So we have a double whistle with a secondary defender, and we have the center referee who essentially says it's his play, takes the play to the table when that's not his play. So we have to understand coverage. Coverage tells me on secondary defenders, plays especially like this one that go right down the lane, we have to be able to understand that our system tells us, our mechanics tell us that this is leads play. Okay, this is leads play all day. Another thing that I want to point out is let's talk about our positioning a little bit on this play. All right, so initially, leads in a great spot, trail is in a pretty good spot, and let's take a look at where our center referee is. Now, our initial dependable position we know is free throw line extended. Now, in the context of this play, I think we have 7 or 8 players that are below the free throw line. So there really isn't a reason why the center referee needs to be so high. Okay, so we have 6 players below the free throw line. It's clear as day that this offensive player is going to drive to the basket because if he didn't, he would have passed it back to the middle of the floor at this point. And so if I'm the center referee, I have to recognize that I need to get the free throw line extended and be patient. If I'm where I'm supposed to be, it gives me an extra second or two to think, whose play is this exactly? Because now, based on this, I'm refereeing towards or through 12s back. I have to judge whether or not the secondary defender moves laterally, and I have to judge whether or not the player gets there prior to the offensive player becoming airborne. And Quinn, I think there's another baseline angle that could help us kind of get the answer for this. But I did want to make a point about positioning for that from this angle, because from here, the angle that we had before, it looks like an offensive foul, and that's why a lot of times when referees from the slot referee position sees this play, they'll call an offensive foul. But we'll take a look at this baseline angle, and we'll see that the defender does not establish the guarding position prior to the offensive player becoming an airborne shooter. So he's there right here. He's there for the most part. And now he decides to move into the offensive player's path. Player is airborne, and the defender is still trying to get into legal guarding position in front of that offense.
Excellent. That's a blocking foul. Now, whose primary is this, Greg?
I think Greg might have frozen up on us.
He was so stunned by that call. Can he unfreeze himself?
We'll see. Can I answer the question?
Yes.
Oh, no, Greg's unfrozen. Greg can answer the question now.
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know when the last question was, but I think it was.
The question was, tell us, let's discuss primary versus secondary responsibility on this play. Who's got primary?
Primary responsibility would be the lead referee, because lead is responsible for secondary defenders on drives to the basket in this context. And
In
so
this context, by the way, that was important. Yeah, and this play is dangerous. They have a double whistle, and it's between the slot and the lead. Very easy to have a blarge on this play. Very easy. And if you want to see what a blarge looks like, and just hold on, we'll show you one in just a few minutes. All right.
Just one other quick thing here. They talked about, lead has responsibility for this secondary defender. As we come here, Trail has this primary defender on this matchup. And it's important here. I think sometimes in Trail, when they beat their primary defender, we sort of relax. We can disengage sometimes. But it's important to notice, even on this play, that primary defender who he's now beat is still actually trailing this play. And it's important that Trail stay engaged on this as well, because we could have a situation where this defender comes, bumps him from behind, and knocks him into the defensive player, knocks him to the side, gets him on the shooting arm. All sorts of things can happen with that primary defender who technically he's sort of beat, but is still trailing him.
Excellent. And just take us back one more time to the slot's initial position, his initial setup. I'll tell you, stop right there. Okay. Anytime, I don't know what we're refereeing on this play as a slot. But anytime that you're standing directly behind a player and you're looking at his numbers, you're in a bad spot. So if the guy dribbling the ball had completely fooled Greg on this play and actually passed the ball, who's the guy he's probably gonna pass the ball to? The guy that the slot official is standing right behind. So if this guy that is at the bottom of our screen, standing right in front of the slot, if he catches a pass here, the slot is gonna be either dead stuck or he's gonna have to go into late scramble mode, right, Greg?
Yes.
So he's already in a bad spot. He should have been down below this player, more below the free throw line extended, really. In order to have now he's decided, well, my guy who now he's in scramble mode again. But who do you think he's refereeing on this play? He is not refereeing the secondary defender. He's refereeing, there's two secondary defenders. The only one he can actually be refereeing from beginning to end is number 12.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only guy he could be looking at from beginning to end. Right?
This is an example of somebody who's ball watching.
Yeah, just lead this play to the lead. If the lead doesn't have a whistle on this play, then somebody else come in and put a whistle on it and guess.
Well, to your point, Chuck, we've all got a job to do out here, right? And we just talked about Trail's got the primary defender who's been beat. Lead has this secondary defender, and the slot can help us out with 12. There's going to be times where 12 comes across and initiates contact that's going to be very difficult for the lead or the trail to see. So again, we've all got responsibility. It's about recognizing what our responsibility is on this particular play.
Hey Quinn, I'm not sure if I broke up a little bit when I was talking about slots initial or center's initial positioning. Did you guys hear what I said about that?
Yeah, we heard you.
Yeah.
We got you.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
All right. Next play.
Yep.
All right. There we go.
So we'll start with the play itself, the block charge play, because there's a lot we could talk about on this play. But we'll get a few replays. We'll get a baseline angle, which is great, and we'll start first with whose play this is, whose play this belongs to, and this coverage wise should be Leeds play. And from this angle, it gives you a great reason why. So this is a secondary defender or a help defender who comes over to try to draw a charge. There are too many players in center's primary area of responsibility for him to take this play. So we have center who's trying to referee the offensive player who's driving baseline. You have a defender who's going to come from behind potentially, and you have someone who is on the front side. Now, my question to the group who's watching would be, who would be on the defender the longest? And our mechanics would tell us Lead has been refereeing this play, or should have been refereeing this player a lot longer than center was. And so both our coverage tells us, hey, Lead has secondary defender, and Lead's been on the player the longest. Lead has all the information to judge this play. So that's one. Two, we have to understand that this defender never establishes legal guarding position in time to draw a charge. Now, watching the baseline angle, some may think, well, is he an airborne shooter? Is he not an airborne shooter? Like the contact happens really close to when he's in the air. He doesn't establish legal guarding position prior to this offensive player getting airborne. That's why this is a blocking foul, because he has to have 2 feet on the ground, inbounds, torso facing the defender. And here he's moving into the offensive player at the time of contact. And so a lot of times you'll see the force of this contact. You'll see a defensive player fall. Offensive player really doesn't get affected a whole lot. You might want to call an offensive foul here. It's not, purely because the defender is just late. He's moving into the offensive player's path. He's moving into the offensive player at the time of contact. Correctly called a blocking foul.
I think it was ruled a player control foul here.
Was it?
I think the lead. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it
So
does.
incorrectly judged an offensive
Yeah.
foul. This is a blocking foul.
But actually, to that point, let me just add a little something here. If you watch the lead's mechanic, um, he punches the other way, and I think this is why we want to go one hand behind the head, point the other way, because this could be confused, and that might have been what Greg saw. This could
Yeah.
be confused as potentially. I mean, the ball didn't go in the basket, but if you're not looking, or if the ball does go in the basket, that this mechanic can look very much like score the basket instead of a player control foul. So just mechanically, you know, we can do a little bit better of a job of communicating exactly what that is, especially on a play of this nature.
As much fun as it is to like punch for an offensive foul or a player control foul, there is a reason why the signal is to put the hand behind our head and point in the other direction. And it's because of this kind of play. Or if the ball
And
goes
in
and
all the games I observed last year, I saw crew after crew after crew situations where they just got completely confused, and coaches and players, by that mechanic because they thought we were scoring a basket as opposed to punching a player control foul. So they were assuming a blocking foul. Okay, next.
Oop, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry, we'll get to the right one here in a second. Here we go. But no, it's out of bounds. All right, here we go.
so this one's an interesting play because it doesn't involve a whole lot of contact. And for the purpose of this discussion, we're talking about the legality of a defender. So we have to ask ourselves first, is this defender a legal defender? 2 feet on the ground, inbounds, torso is facing the defender. That offensive player has already returned to the ground with the pass. And so it's not even like the defender gets there and undercuts him before and he can't let him land. We have a defender who's there, and now it's our job to kind of figure out, okay, is there enough contact, illegal contact, for there to be an offensive foul? Or can we get away with not calling anything? On this play, the referee rules this a blocking foul. Now, if you call it a blocking foul, I can guarantee the coach is going to ask you, what did this player do wrong? Because the player is just sitting there. It's not a whole lot or a whole lot of time that he's sitting there, but he's sitting there. So we have a legal defender who there's contact, falls to the ground, and we call a blocking foul. By rule, this would be a player control foul. Even though it's weird, it's not your standard just truck through the guy's chest, but we have a legal defender, sufficient contact for there to be a foul, so it's illegal contact, and you can go with an offensive foul. I think another option you have is just a no call. Maybe there's just not enough contact for there to be an offensive foul. But one, it's not a blocking foul because he's legal. And two, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, I called a blocking foul because he's flopping. Well, if we have contact, there's sufficient contact for a foul, how can we call a flop? And so either we have a no call in this play, or you're going to call the blocking foul and have to go explain to a coach what he did wrong, the defender did wrong.
I mean, you tried to explain yourself out of a play like that, didn't you, Greg? What'd you tell them that the contact didn't match up with something or something? What'd you say?
Well, yeah, the contact, I had a play once and I genuinely did not know how to get out of it because coaches are smart and they know how to pick apart what you say. I called a flop and I went and told him like, yeah, the way he fell doesn't match the contact he received. And then the coach goes, so you're saying there was contact? And I was like, yeah, well, there was contact, but it didn't match. He's like, well, isn't that a foul then? It's like, well, I guess I just started getting in my own head like, well, he has a point. There's contact, there's illegal contact. Why am I calling a flop?
That's good. I do want to point out just quickly, just a reminder, there is no restricted area in high school basketball. This player was in the restricted area, but it doesn't matter because there is no such thing in high school basketball. If they're legal, they're entitled to any spot on the floor, on the playing court, as long as they're legal. Okay. Is this one
All right.
mine? Did y'all give me an easy one to?
Well, don't worry, you'll find a way to mess it up.
Thank you. I need that confidence in me.
I have faith in you. Here you
So
go.
the rule here is that a player with the ball may not push the torso of the guard to gain an advantage to pass, shoot, or dribble. Okay, so let's see if this matches up with the rule. So he did all of those things and properly ruled a player control foul. Again from the trail, who again is very, you're gonna see this, we're very, very quick with our preliminaries on this play. And I understand this one seems like an easy one and it showtime, so we can kind of put a little mustard on this one. But it's not really necessary. Everybody in the gym knows it's player control. And it can get you in trouble, as we will see. Okay? I'm finished. I didn't mess that up. Oh, I do have a question though, for Jeremy Jessup. Jeremy, this is a true or false question. If an offensive play, and this goes back to a play that we saw, I think the very first block charge clip that Greg broke down for us. And he talked about the offensive player coming down the baseline and lowering his shoulder and going right through the guy. If an offensive player dribbling the ball lowers his or her shoulder on a drive to the basket and there is contact with the defender, the ruling must be player control foul for lowering the shoulder. True or false? Okay,
You
let's
know,
go to the next clip.
well, we'll just quickly. Well, one of the things we talked about on this play, and I mentioned, this is a really dangerous. These block charge plays that occur right at the free throw line are really dangerous areas to possibly have blarges because neither of us expect that we're going to have it. The only blarge I've ever had in my career was a block charge play at the free throw line, and it was a blarge between the trail and the center because neither of us expected the other to have a whistle. So again, just be careful.
The truth on this play is I don't know how the slot official got as high as he was, and now he's having to try to walk his way into an angle on this play. But the truth is, this play initiated from the slot's primary. The slot has this all the way to the basket. It's a primary defender. This was slot's call, and the trail took it. I don't know why the slot didn't have a whistle, other than the fact that he, was trying to figure out where to get it. But it's very easy for the slot to have had a whistle on this play. And it's very easy for somebody in this play to have ruled that the defender wasn't, for some reason, legal. I'm not saying that it shouldn't have been easy, but it happens. And again, just piling up on Quinn's point, this is where you normally are going to have a blarge, if you're going to have a blarge, the between the trail and the slot.
All right, let's look at another one here. Um, all right, I'm trying to remember. I think we have a replay of this one. Yeah. Okay. So again, just same sort of principles as before, right? So we have a secondary defender, right? So if we go back to the overhead view, so we have a secondary help defender coming over, and in this case, I think what we really have is almost he never actually gets fully in front of the player. He sort of gets one leg over and in front of him, but never really gets fully in front of him. We have contact. We sometimes talk about, Greg's going to talk a little bit later on some plays about, just visual sort of keys and cues to help you identify sort of legal things. When the contact is on one leg from the side and that guy twists like that, that's almost always a block. So again, here, just we have a blocking foul. He never establishes legal guarding position. When the coach says, "Hey, what did he do wrong there?" Coach, he never established in front of him. He got one leg part of the way over. That leg's outside his frame anyway. He never had legal guarding position. Chuck, I think, did you want to say something about the leads
Yeah,
positioning here a
just
bit?
look at the lead right there. That just stop it right there. So, the reason I noticed this is because in breaking down this whole game film, I noticed that that was a kind of a favored spot for the lead to get in, right on top of the baseline. So I have a true or false question for the entire NBOA varsity staff. True or false? Chuck likes the position of the lead official on this play. And I'm gonna give you all a hint, everybody. When you send your answer in, answer false. I think that we got the message here. Let's make a note. Depth and width are invariably the friend of the lead official. On this play, the width is not a problem, the depth, or lack thereof. He got the play right, but there are many instances in this game where we didn't, and the reason we didn't is because we're right on top of the baseline as opposed to getting the depth that we really need to have on the play. Does that make sense, Greg?
Sure does.
All right, that's why I hired you, Greg,
All right.
but you don't get a raise.
That's okay. I'm in due time.
All right. I think this one we're gonna have a quick turnover and go the other way, Greg. So talk us through this.
Yeah, let's first start by just saying these plays are tough. These plays are tough because as we get older, as referees and as people, high school basketball is going to be the same age group. And so they're always going to be quick. And so we always want to tell ourselves, like, we want to try as hard as we can to get to the baseline, but we have to be able to tell us, okay, if I'm not going to get to the baseline, I got to get to a position where I can referee this kind of play. And if I still can't get to a position where I can referee this kind of play, I have to be able to train myself or condition myself to think there could be certain cues that can kind of hint towards what kind of play I just had in front of me. So if you could stop it right here, we have a fast break play. I'm not going to make it to the baseline from here. But this offensive player, we already know he's going to the basket. He's not going to do anything else. The defender has two options. He can either, one, get ready to contest the shot and try to block the shot, or two, he's going to try to draw a charge. And so if we keep the clip moving forward, we're going to see here the defender makes up his mind. Okay, I'm going to have to try and draw a charge here. And so we have to tell ourselves, all right, do I have a good enough angle on the defender to make good judgment on whether or not he beats them to the spot? Really difficult here. This play, the defender gets there late. And at the time of contact, look where the referee is. It's basically either right behind the offensive player or right next to the play, which is really hard to make a judgment. And if we are just a little bit more patient and register some cues that we can see, it might help us get this play correct. So in my judgment, this is a blocking foul, or at least it should have been a blocking foul. Now, what cue or cues do I see here? We have an offense or a defensive player who starts on one side of the offensive player. There's contact that ends up on the other side of the offensive player, which means he never actually got in front of him. Two, we have this concept of being submarined. And what that looks like, if you can see the little box on the right-hand side, offensive players up here, defensive players down here. And now we have this kind of motion that could only happen if the defender is late and or bellies up. And so here, defender's not in his path, decides to puff his chest up, and now submarines the offensive player to the ground. That's a blocking foul.
So I think, Greg, I mean, those are all great points. One of the things we want to emphasize, because we're going to come back to it later, is exactly this idea that we've got to, as soon as the ball is turned over and we know we've got to go the length of the court, we have to identify that first defender that's going to be contesting the ball, right? So in this case, right, it's this player, and right here, right, by the time he turns, right, when he turns right here, you can tell here that he's going to try and get in front of this play. So at this point, we have to make a decision to referee that as like a block charge play versus, right here, he could have made the decision, I'm going to let him go past me and I'm going to come and maybe try to block the shot from behind or something like that. But right here, as we're getting near midcourt, we've got to try and identify. And so, you know what? Sometimes we're going to guess wrong. I mean, but we're trying to use the information we have available to us to understand what the likely next play is going to be so that we can position ourselves to best referee that play.
Mhm. And as soon as that turnover happens and I'm trail, and this applies to not just transition plays like this applies in many different aspects of refereeing, is who's going to hurt me? Which defender is going to hurt me? And that's where my eyes are going to go. And so as soon as there's a turnover, I see, okay, the defender that's in the middle of the court is the defender that's going to hurt me. Okay, what are his two options? He's going to either block the shot or try to draw and charge. And once you see enough plays where players want to contest, they tend to slow down a little bit so they can try and time the offensive player jumping. This doesn't happen here. He tries to speed up a little bit to get in front of the offensive player, which means he's going to try to draw a charge. He just didn't get there quick enough.
Right. All right,
All right,
Chuck,
that's excellent.
this is a favorite of yours.
Oh, good. I'll try not to mess this one up. So we might have saved this for a later clinic, but I got so juiced up over this that I just wanted to go ahead and get it as soon as possible. So this is a throw. I consider all throw-in plays to be transition plays. When we talk about areas of responsibility, Greg said it earlier. He mentioned context. Well, in this context, our areas of responsibility have to change. We have to referee where the players are. We especially have to be acute about refereeing where the players are and what our partners can and cannot referee, et cetera, et cetera. So here's the throw in, and the lead obviously is on our side of the floor here, right there. And you can't see the lead. That's a good thing. We don't want to be able to see the lead here because two players are getting ready to come over to that corner, and that's what the lead needs to be primarily concerned with. The trail obviously has the player throwing the ball in and the defender as primary responsibility. Now, as soon as the ball's thrown in, let it get thrown in and then stop it about as soon as it's caught. When there. You see that the trail, I'm sorry, has followed the pass and is no longer refereeing either the matchup she had to begin with, nor is she refereeing down to the left. She's not refereeing that matchup either. So somebody needs to be. When that throwing occurs, if the player for black tries to run in the court and go catch a pass or something and the player that's guarding her, grabs her or whatnot, who's going to see that? Right now. It's not gonna be the trail. The trail might. So anyhow, the ball's thrown in the trail is primary. I always say, be careful about following the pass. And most of the time, you don't want to follow the pass as an official. But in this case, the trail's got to come off the throw in and get to that catch pretty quickly. I think both of you agree, right, Greg and Quinn? Okay,
Yes.
so we want the lead to be wide on this play. Wide and deep is going to be key on this play. But look, take it another glitch until we can find the lead, finally see the lead here, Quinn. And then we'll come back to there's the lead, okay? The lead has been looking into the paint the whole time. So is in no position to give any help on this drive to the basket. Might be in position, but is not looking and doesn't see the play. And the trail now stopped right there. So the lead needed to be wide on this play, but you need to look where you need to look, not the space, not the empty space. Now the trail came out here and got herself completely straight line from the get-go. Right, Greg?
Yes.
Okay, so we can argue we can not argue, we can discuss all day long. Should she have gotten high, more towards the division, out towards the division line? Or should she have stayed maybe a step below this play? Right? But whatever, however you want to referee this play, it is not this way. So we didn't fight hard enough or, or think through this quickly enough to get to where we needed to be to referee this play. And then it goes further downhill from here. So this defender is going to stay on this play the whole time. But look, we've made no adjustment to referee that play at all. None. And so we no call what is obvious contact on this play. If it's not a blocking foul, it's a tripping foul. It knocks and the contact is initiated by the defensive player. Never had an initial legal guarding position, never on this play. And you can't get away with a no call because, well, at least the offensive team kept the ball. They're lucky to have kept the ball. The offensive player was knocked off her pace, direction, balance, and really lost control of the ball. Just sort of like knocked it over to her teammate just to keep from having to get stolen. So it's bad positioning. It's a bad no call. And I can tell you again, if you're going to try to dig yourself out of this, please don't tell a coach, well, she flopped. The defensive player flopped. She did it. There was contact on the play. She put it on somebody. But if you're going to say it was an offensive foul, offensive player generated or initiated contact, well, clearly put the defensive player at a disadvantage. If you're going to say the defensive player initiated contact, clearly put the offensive player at a disadvantage. But the one thing it's not, this is not a flop. If there was no contact at all on this play, it's still not a flop. All that happened then, if there was no contact, is the defensive player tripped over her own feet and fell backwards. And she fell right on, she almost fell on her, flat on her back. That, you don't fall that way on a flop. When you talk about keys, right, Greg?
Totally.
Right.
If
Okay, I've finished my rant, Quinn.
if I may add just one or two things.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
This is not a play where we can think to ourselves, 50-50, maybe we can let them play through it or whatever. There are a few times in a game where like you get gift basketed of like a foul. Someone just gifted you this play. This is an easy one to take. And, whether or not the trail referee either had an angle or just didn't think it was enough, or they were both going the same direction, lead referee has license to come and take this because this is an obvious foul. It happens below the free throw line, even though it's outside the 3-point line and it's technically in trail's position. What else are we refereeing? So we have to be able to be aware enough to extend our coverage into our secondary and realize, okay, if I'm going to come out of my secondary, I'm coming out for strikes. This one right here, again, we don't know what happened earlier in the game. The coach could lose their mind on this play. Because, what if it does lead to a turnover? And then now either we have a late whistle and one coach is going to get mad because you just took a turnover away from them, or you're not going to have a whistle and now the other coach is going to get mad because they just had a turnover. If someone puts a bow on a play like this because it's just a gift for you, take it. And two, Quinn, if you don't mind just like going back to the initial throw-in, if what I'm thinking to myself on this throw-in, if I'm the referee, we're not going to go through the whole play, but okay, we have a throw-in count. I have my count. I might be a little closer to the thrower in, but that's okay. As soon as they throw the ball in and I take my step or two to my right here, the offensive player made the decision to not dribble to midcourt. And so I go, I have to go down. I have to go towards the 28-foot line because right here, the offensive player is telling me she wants to go to her left. And so if I go towards the baseline and I'm closer to that 28-foot line, I have a better shot at getting this play right. But instead, I just decide to stay where I'm at. You got to read those cues.
Very good. You saved the best for the last.
All right. Shall we just watch it through first?
Run it through one time, and then we'll ask Greg to tell us whether this was a blocking foul or a player control foul and why.
So talking about the play itself, in my opinion, this is an obvious blocking foul. The defender, although he tried his best, was never able to get essentially in front of the offensive player before that offensive player became an airborne shooter. And so you have to think to yourself, does this defender beat the offensive player to the spot? The answer is no. And if you were to pause it just before contact for me, Quinn, right here, matter of fact, pause it right here. If you were to draw a straight line from that offensive player to the basket, the defender is not there. So at this point, the defender's beat. Still defender's beat. So now we have covered the play as to whether or not this was judged as a blocking foul or charge. It should have been called a blocking foul.
So
Okay, so
McCann,
obviously, I told you we were gonna see a blarge. I told you we were gonna see a blarge, and here's what a blarge looks like. So Quinn, take us through primary, secondary responsibility on this particular play, please.
sure. So um, we got this is a transition play. All right. So the first thing I just want to say is when we have a transition play, we've got to sort of slow down and expect unexpected things in a way. Like I've got to expect that, like, there may be, I may have to extend out of my area a little bit, but likewise, that means one of my partners may also extend out of their area a little bit. So, I mean, the first thing that gets us in trouble with this large, right, and this is mechanically not anything to do with coverage, is we just both officials signal way too fast, uh, give a preliminary signal. So that's issue number one. Now, from a coverage perspective, um, Greg asked the question earlier on a play, who's going to have been able to watch this defender for the longest amount of time? Right? That's the person, whoever was going to be able to pick up that defender and see them the longest before the contact is probably the official that's going to have the best judgment on whether the contact is legal or illegal. So in this case, as we watch this play, um, we're going to dribble the length of the court, right? So the slot is actually in transition, has this player coming through, and now, right, if we watch, so right here, right, this is that player that's eventually going to draw the or try to draw a player control foul. So again, the slot has this player all the way, right, all the way, all the way, all the way. Now, the old trail new lead is doing a great job of, I mean, he's hustling to, it's not, he didn't take the play off by any means, but he has other players in between. He actually has an offensive and defensive player between him and this play, and at the point of contact, right, still has a defender in his way and is still running. Whereas the slot is at least slowing down here, has maybe not gotten to a full stop, but has at least slowed down. Eyes aren't bouncing up and down quite as much, right? We're a little more locked in to officiate this play. So again, I think slot has this matchup the whole way and is able to correctly rule that this is a blocking foul. Now, there is a school of thought, right, that this is a transition play. The lead has everybody's a secondary defender. Lead has secondary defenders. That this ought to be lead's primary. I think the next level thinking on that is exactly what we've just talked about, though, which is who has seen that play the furthest. So even if I'm in the lead and I'm going, well, that was a secondary defender, I guess I could take it. I'm actually probably in that situation going to wait to see if my slot will take the foul first. Now, if my slot doesn't take a foul, I got to come with something. So in that case, maybe I come and maybe I get it wrong. right? Because it was a tough play for me. But I think ideally what we would have had here is a delayed whistle or no whistle from the lead and to let slot take that play to the basket. Um, anything else, guys? I mean, is that any
I
other
think,
thoughts on that?
and I think that the fact that the play, once it got into the front court, that the play started and ended on the slot side of the lane, again, makes it, more likely that the slot's gonna have the best look at that play. And it's a play that I feel like we need, if you're gonna have a meaningful pregame, I'm not saying this crew didn't, this is a good crew, and I know they had a meaningful pregame. But this is the type of play that needs to be included in a pregame, I think, how we're gonna referee this type of transition play. But that's all, that I've got to say on that. So now,
Okay.
Quinn, now you can tell that you can tell the slot is having an oh shit, uh-oh moment, right? He's going like, uh-oh. So now we got to figure out how we're gonna administer this. So just walk us through how we administer a double foul of this type, Quinn.
Yeah. So just sort of procedurally, and we're not going to get into, there's all sorts of game management things. We're not going to get into all those. But one thing I do want to sort of just quickly point out, um, the lead, one thing the lead does really well, we have players on the floor, and the lead is really focused in on those players on the floor. I mean, this is a big rivalry game. This is like, that's great. That's what we want the lead to do. But because of that, like at this point, the lead still, I don't think, has recognized that we have that we've had a blarge. So finally, the C does a good job of coming over. Okay, they communicate. All right, so we've had a blarge. The one thing you're not going to do is talk your way out of it. You've screwed up once. Don't screw it up twice by misapplying the rule or trying to make up something or try to get out of it. And well, but I hadn't, I came up here with my block and I only got to here. I never actually hit my hips. So, I didn't really signal a block. Like, just we screwed up. We have a rule that will get us out of this. If we have one official signal a player control foul and another official signal a block, it is by rule a double foul. Okay. Period. End of story. Okay. All right. So what does that mean? First and foremost, that means we are going to report both fouls. Both players will be charged with a foul on this play. Both of those will be team fouls, right? All of those things. So we're going to come back here, and I don't know if you can even see the numbers, but whoever this red 21 and I don't know, is that 0 maybe? White. Those two players, these two players right here, are both going to be charged with a foul. All right, that's number one. Now the question is, well, what do we do with everything else? All right. The first thing you have to do is you have to make a determination as to the status of the ball when you blew your whistle. Had the ball been released on a try or not? Okay. If the ball has been released on a try, then we don't have any team control. Okay. So all double fouls go to point of interruption. However, if we don't have any team control, the point of interruption is going to be an alternating possession throw in. Okay. So in this case, and actually I think this is actually pretty tough. If you've got to decide, at what point did I call the foul, at what point does this go from, okay, maybe it's not illegal yet there, but now there it's illegal. Has he released it yet or not? But you got to make a determination one way or the other. So if you say he's released it, then a couple of things. So the first is we will resume. Well, okay, sorry. If he's released it, in this case, the ball doesn't go in the basket. So we don't have any team control, and the point of interruption would be an alternating possession throw in on the baseline. If it was released double foul and the ball goes through the basket, then there is an NFHS casebook play that covers this. You will score the basket. This is not a player control foul. Normally, if we have a player control foul on an airborne shooter, we can't score the basket. But by rule, this isn't a player control foul. This is a double foul. So we actually can score that basket. So if the ball had gone in here, we would score the basket and we would give the ball to white. The point of interruption would be a baseline throw in for white. All right. Now, if you rule, let's say you rule, we have foul right here, ball hasn't been released, then we are going to give the ball back to red because red is in team control at this point. So we would give the ball back to red on the baseline for a throw in. It's not an alternating possession throw in. It's just a throw in going back to red because red had the ball at the time of the double foul. Have I talked through all those possibilities? Is there?
That was actually perfect. As mean as you've been to me, I have to compliment you on that. Greg, unmute yourself and let us know, is there anything that you want to add with respect to how this play was covered or how the call was made? Or again, we're going to show this clip at a later clinic presentation just to talk us all through, the crew communication and how you handle how to handle this when it happens. But in terms of the play itself, the call itself, the coverage itself, do you have anything you want to add?
No, honestly, I think we hit everything on the nose, unless there was something in pre-taping that we had talked about that I haven't brought up. But two things I would like to say, and I love that this is being recorded and someone can just screen record this specific play. If it gets sent out, great. But Chuck, like you said, these are the kind of plays that, some newer referees talk about. What do you talk about in pre-games? I'm pulling out my phone and I'm showing you this clip and I'm saying, how are we going to cover this play? Like, we're talking about this before the game. That's one. Two, Quinn, to your point about, oh, can we I didn't actually signal, I put my two fists in the air, but it could have been anything. You have to have enough integrity to know, I messed up. It happens. There's a rule in the rule book that can get us out of the situation because it has happened before. And we can't go in there thinking oh my gosh, I'm going to try to weasel my way out of this. Everybody in the stands has a camera on their phone. Someone in the stands is going to be able to see that even though you don't think you signaled, you signaled. The coach is going to think you called it. Everybody's going to think you called it. And this is going to get clipped, sent to Chuck. Now Chuck's getting phone calls. He's got a headache now. We don't want that. Just be honest with yourself, have enough integrity and say, hey, I messed up. There's a rule that I have to know to get out of this. Yeah, it just goes back to being disciplined. It goes back to being patient and having a good pregame about how you're going to cover this play. Because it sucks. It happens to the best of us. It happened in the NCAA tournament last year, I think in the Sweet 16. It just happens,
Yep.
But it just comes back to having a good pregame and understanding your mechanics and your coverage.
Greg heard this weekend too. One thing I heard a supervisor say this weekend that sort of just stuck with me, which is an idea I've heard before, but it was give your supervisor every reason to support you. Okay. You've screwed something up. Now give Chuck every reason to be able to say when that coach is burning up his phone, I can't believe they did this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah, they had a blarge. Everything they did from there was right. Right. If you try to weasel your way out of it and then there's, somebody, to Greg's point, somebody's got a picture of you with both fists in the air and your partner, with one hand behind the head. There's not a lot your supervisor can do to support you. But if you make the mistake and you adjudicate it correctly from there, I mean, Chuck can have your back then, right? Chuck
Right.
can say, well,
That,
hey,
that's
look, I understand you don't like the rule, coach, but they did it right.
right.
So, the one other
100%.
thing, sorry, on this play, Chuck, just real quick, because we just to be aware of now, we could also have had goaltending on this play, except for the fact that the offensive player actually I mean, because of the contact, the ball ends up hitting off the bottom here. But this player could have committed goaltending, and especially with the changes to the goaltending rule, which we'll talk about later, there's a lot potentially going on this play.
Yeah, so don't quit refereeing just because the whistle blows, and the trail is more important now this year than it's ever been, and it's always been really important. The trail can't take these plays off and just wait for the ball to come back the other way. We need to sprint to the front court on these plays so that we can help out on basket interference, goaltending, whether the ball went in the basket or not. I can tell you that there have been games where a ball went in the basket and nobody in the crew knew that the ball went in the basket, or vice versa, they thought the ball went in the basket and it didn't. So anyhow, I think that we've done a good job of breaking these films down. Hopefully, everybody will read and feel like they've learned something from it, and we can call it a night. Thank everybody very much.